Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studio, it's time for the GNFCC 400 Insider. Connect, build, and grow with the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce.
Hello, and welcome to the GNFCC 400 Insider, the monthly radio show and podcast by the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce. I'm Rebekah Anderson, your Vice President at the Greater North Fulton Chamber. And yesterday at our North Fulton Focus Series, we had quite an amazing day. We welcomed a fireside chat with the president of Delta. We recognized our participants in the North Fulton Friendship Initiative. We held the graduation ceremonies for our Leadership North Fulton class of 2024. And of course, we had the distinct pleasure of honoring our 2024 Nonprofit of the Year award winners. Brewable won in the small nonprofit category, and Drake House was awarded in the large nonprofit category. And we are thrilled to have them both with us here today. First, let me introduce Brewable's board president, Nicky Rudd. Thanks for being here, Nicky.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. And also joining us in studio today is Nesha Mason, president of the Drake House. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So let's kick things off by letting our listeners get to know you both better. Nicky, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Brewable and what Brewable is.
Absolutely. My name's Nicky Rudd, of course. I am a proud resident of Alpharetta. Actually, I live right near Brewable. Day job is I work for Morgan Stanley. Okay. I'm a financial advisor and an investment analyst. How I got involved with Brewable and how Brewable came about was actually through my son, who is on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
And he actually went to school in Alpharetta at Mill Springs Academy and is a very average kid in many ways, except for his challenges around autism. And he had some hearing and vision issues. And once he graduated from high school, college just wasn't a good fit for him. Mm. And he went to get some jobs in the community, and he had a horrible experience.
Oh.
And he just went home, and he was sitting in the basement, and he said to me, "Mom, successful people have jobs." And I said, "Absolutely, Griff, I understand that." I said, "And you will get a job." And he said, "Mom, I am just such a loser. I can't keep a job." And I said, "Sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's the environment you're in." So I went and set about to try to find how could I help him. And I recognized that there's tons of other folks in that situation.
Sure.
Because you get a lot of services when you're of school age, and then school's over and all those things go away. So at the time, the city of Alpharetta was looking to improve some things about the city in general and wondering, were there some things they were missing? Mm. And they did a survey, and apparently it came back that they felt that we weren't doing a good job in Alpharetta with the arts. And the other piece was adults with disabilities. And so there was a little group that got together with the mayor and some other folks, and they came up with this idea.
Oh.
But none of them had any nonprofit experience.
Right.
And I had some significant nonprofit board experience with other nonprofits in the developmental disability space. Mm. So they had contacted me, and I became the board president.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. It's been great. We started out, of course, just before COVID, which is always the best time to start a business where you're serving people.
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome? We're like, wow, we're opening this place up. Everybody's got to stay home. So
talk about a challenge.
Oh my God, a huge challenge. We from the beginning had a huge list of folks who want to be employees. So
that's great.
Isn't that awesome? So all our employees have intellectual and developmental disabilities. There are paid jobs. You may all be shocked, but there are jobs in the community where parents of adults pay that company to have their kids do work there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awful. And there are also other organizations that will pay the normal person who is helping the adult with disabilities, but not pay the adult with disabilities.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that just went against everything that we believed in.
Sure, that deserved to be self-fulfilled as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the things. Our program are the jobs. Mm. People say, "What's your program?" It's employment. It's employment, paid employment for these folks. And we had tons of people who wanted to work for us, which was great, except we don't didn't have a whole lot of openings to start with.
Yeah.
So we started with a table in the community center, and eventually with the city built out the community center and our original space.
Right.
So that's how we started. We had the COVID challenge, which we had to get creative.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up doing a lot of coffee boxes and soliciting businesses in the area and saying, hey, you know what? Got this idea. Why don't you send it to your employees? Can't have a cup of coffee with you at work, but enjoy this on me kind of thing.
That's nice.
That's an excellent idea.
So we sent all those out, and companies, we probably sold 700 boxes.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, it was awesome. It really filled the gap for a while. It kept everybody busy because they had to do all the boxes. And that got us through COVID and back on our feet. And then from then, we've looked to grow. And this year, we actually have added a second location.
Excellent.
Which is a standalone location over in Roswell. And so we have partnered with the Roswell United Methodist Church. They had a building on Mimosa that was not being used, and they really felt like our mission resonated with them, and they wanted to use that building for something like what we were doing. Yeah. And so it's a great fit. So we opened up there in February and have been getting that going and exploring ideas for how to drive traffic and get our name out there.
That's excellent. That's such exciting news for the families that have been looking for exactly something like you and your son were looking for.
Oh, absolutely. It changed. I see how much it changed my son's life. He's a funny guy. He actually loves to sing. And they used to call him the singing barista because he would sing to everybody when they came in.
That's a treat.
Yeah, it was great. And so then one day we were driving along and we noticed they were hiring people at Shake Shack. And he said, Mom, do you think I could get a job at Shake Shack? I said, I don't know. Why not? You can. I think I can do this. So he went in and he got a job at Shake Shack, and he's been there for 2 years. And that opened up a spot for us to hire somebody else.
Oh, way to go, Griff.
So it's great. So Griff's in great shape, and he's keeping that place in line, and we're able to hire more people over at our space.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, Shake Shack.
Awesome.
We see you, Shake Shack.
I love Shake Shack. Those people are awesome here in Alpharetta. They love him. He loves them. It's great.
That's wonderful. Good. And Nesha, tell us about how you get involved with the Drake House and what the Drake House is for those who might not know.
Absolutely. So I consider it to be a complete blessing to be a part of the legacy of the Drake House. I say it all the time. My favorite part of the history is the fact that it was born from community leaders that went through Leadership North Fulton, through the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, and identified a need, right? Shout out to the Chamber. Identified the need to provide housing for single mothers and their children who are experiencing homelessness. And particularly not just a shelter, but really housing that would allow their teenage boys to be in the same space as them, to allow the whole family to overcome that circumstance of homelessness with dignity and their family intact. That was the big part of the founding of the Drake House. And that's why when you talk about employment, Nicky, that is such a big part of dignity. Like for families to be able to support themselves, for in the case of your son and all of your brewistas, for them to be able to support themselves and have something to call their contribution.
Absolutely.
And I think that too many times with the Drake House, we run into moms being unemployed or underemployed because of that circumstance of being a single mom, not having the resources maybe to have childcare while they're at work or transportation. And I loved hearing all of what you guys are doing in terms of with Brewable and providing that for the students there. So yeah, I really identify with that.
I think we resonate on that same thing. I think people need to feel like they're valued.
Yes.
And I think that when you don't have that, whether you're a person who's looking to reestablish yourself and your family and the community, or you have a disability, having other people recognize you as being important.
Yes, and that you can contribute, that you have something to contribute. Everybody has something to contribute, right?
I think so.
Yeah, and that whatever the systematic obstacles may be, doesn't mean that we can't challenge those and make a fit for everybody.
That's exactly it. And so I think that's one of the things that really draws me. It really drew me to the nonprofit space to begin with. I did a stint in local government and thought I was going to be this great change maker and recognized not so much. There's a lot of bureaucracy and stuff to cut
Sure.
through. But I'm seeing the nonprofit sector, and I see how in that sector, we're able to identify a need and with the right leadership and community support, address that need and really have a great impact on people's lives. And I feel blessed to be a part of that space.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful. And it's interesting because I would say that probably some people might feel like that's not such a need here in North Fulton when they think about homelessness. They don't really think about things going on in their own backyard. And that was something that Kathy Swan talked a little bit about when she was on the show, is that people don't really see this with their eyes, but it's just hiding over there. And you could see it if you wanted to see it.
That is so true, Rebekah. I think that was, the eye opener for that Leadership North Fulton class. They didn't know that there was homelessness in North Fulton, but it looks different because the reality is there is isolation. And people have a tendency to ostracize those who they feel are not making enough or not meeting a certain standard. And we see for the families that we serve, they've spent a really long time and a tremendous amount of money trying to assimilate, trying to cover the fact that they don't have a place to live. So oftentimes, for all intents and purposes, you see this family come in and they look like, okay, not what we stereotype homelessness to be.
Sure.
So mom is together, children are together, but they have to present in that way for mom in order for her to keep custody of her children and for the whole family in order for them to get that sort of neighborly treatment that we provide for one another. So oftentimes, and the other thing that we see oftentimes are families who have had to choose their car over their home.
Right.
So we'll see cars people who come in and you're thinking, how is it you're driving this car? The car gets me to and from work. It gets my children to and from school. And it also gives me that sense of normal, the appearance of normal, just like everybody else. But when you think about the fact that in North Fulton, if you're making less than $82,000 a year, you are house poor for them. You're disproportionately spending your income on housing. And when you think about a single mom, single parent income, there's only so much to go around. And there's sacrifices that you end up having to make so that you can provide some sense of normalcy, some sense of stability for your children. And unfortunately, sometimes that sacrifice is housing.
Yeah. And can you elaborate on the importance of keeping the older male children together with the mom for those who might not know what the stigma is and the process around a typical shelter environment?
Absolutely. So especially at the time, 20 years ago, when that class went through Leadership North Fulton, and the same is really true today. We've gotten a little bit better today, but for teenage boys, they had to go to a men's shelter, and they were classifying teenage as 12 years old. So as a mom of boys, I was thinking to myself, what would that feel like for me it's bad enough that I'm having to lean into someplace that is not my home and bring my children there and provide for them some sense of it's okay, we're going to be all right. But to have to then send my 12-year-old son to a men's shelter where I am not going to be there. I don't know who is going to be there. And it's not all going to be in the light of day. He's got to actually spend the night there.
Sure.
That was, I think, the real caveat for that class to say, we're not just going to try to tackle this while we're in Leadership North Fulton. We're going to keep working until we do something. And in 2006, they went through LNF. In 2004 and 2006, they opened the doors of the Drake House.
Wow. Such a great story.
Yeah, I love it.
We love
Super
to hear
impressive.
it. And one of our favorite things to do at the Chamber is to celebrate the variety of North Fulton nonprofits and their dedication and service to this community. We have a plethora, which I think is a trademark of a really bustling and thriving community to be able to serve different pockets. I know I'm from a rural area, and then my youngest brother has autism.
Okay.
But where I grew up, there is no autism. No
Nobody's
services
recognizing
for
it.
Nobody knows what it is. So he wasn't diagnosed until he was 26.
Oh, wow.
Until I had the tools to go and get him diagnosed. And here in North Fulton, we're so blessed to have so many different nonprofits that are touching different areas. And the Nonprofit of the Year Awards that you both were honored with yesterday recognizes organizations that are making big waves. So, Nicky, can you share what has led your organization's success and what makes it unique over at Brewable?
A couple of things, I think, in terms of what make us unique. First of all, our only requirement for our employees is that they want to work. Not that their mother wants them to work, not that somebody else wants them to work, but do they want to work?
Yeah.
Other than that, we have nonverbal employees. We have deaf employees. We have the folks who are really capable of a lot of things and some folks who are not. What's so interested inside the group, they all are very supportive of each other. They don't notice those differences.
That's lovely.
It's community.
Yeah. They don't notice it that, hey, this guy doesn't talk. They learn to communicate how he can receive it. And I think that's unique. There's no skills test. We know we can teach them how to do this stuff. It's not, we're making coffee and espresso, and this isn't rocket science.
Well, it's very inclusive too.
Yes.
For those parents who are thinking, my child doesn't even speak.
Yes, exactly. I think that's one thing that makes us unique. We're not saying only the highest functioning people can have a job. It's really, if you want to work, we can find a way. Some folks work an hour, and that's all they can do. And that's okay. And sometimes that person who worked an hour, now by this year, can work 2 hours because they've learned things and they've learned how to control themselves a little better, or how to feel good about where they're at, and they feel more comfortable. So we're able to tailor anything around someone's capabilities. So we're making the adjustments. Yeah, we're meeting them there.
I love that.
Not asking them to change for us.
That's beautiful.
So I think that's made us very different.
And in terms of success, I know you said you started just before COVID, so that would make you almost 5 years
5 years,
old.
yeah. Almost 5 years old.
What's been your big key to the successful part?
I think that we really understand that Brewable is not by itself in the community. We need to be engaged with other nonprofits because they're doing some things that can fit in with what we're doing, and vice versa. If we can help another nonprofit in some way, shape, or form, we do that.
Right.
Because they're our community too. And so we really, and that's sort of part of the story too, not just that folks have a job and that they are working at a cafe, but they're working at a cafe in a community center where little kids come in every day to go to dance class and gymnastics and basketball, and they're interacting with the kids, and the kids are interacting with them. And hopefully over time that changes the way people respond to folks with differences.
Yeah.
It's not unusual. Hey, where I go to dance, there's a guy who doesn't speak, but he's awesome.
He makes a mean cup of coffee.
Yeah, he makes a mean cup of coffee. And when he's happy, he jumps up and down. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think there are stars. All we have to do is bring the team with us, and their zest for life and their excitement about having this job and feeling important and showing off what they know how to do. Yeah. It's just, I think that's what's made things really work for us, is we really have tried to create community, as you mentioned, and that they have the same place as everybody else in the community. And how do we get them in there so that it's not an unusual scenario? Yeah. Maybe we're going to make differences okay. Yeah. And the long end vision, right?
Yeah. I'll never forget the first time that I went to a Brewable, I think it was a mobile situation. I was at the Chattahoochee Nature Center for an event, and Brewable's team was there doing the coffee. And so I waited in line, and I got to the front, and the gentleman who was pouring my coffee asked me what my favorite animal was. And I was like, I was not prepared for this. I didn't have a go-to animal. And I was like, but he's very serious about this. Let me take a moment. I can't remember what I settled on, but he was impressed either way, and we had a good conversation. It was just, I'll never forget it. It was a heartwarming experience.
Yeah, it's so fun. And there's one barista that has embraced the spelling bee like no one else. He knows who won the spelling bee every year, what the word was that they won on, how to spell it, and what it means.
That's great.
And so I'll always see him and I'll say, "What's the word of the day, Colin?" And he'll be like, he gives it to me. And then we talk about it for a minute. Now, he might not talk to you about anything else, but if you can get into that spelling bee conversation, this guy knows everything about spelling and the spelling bee and anything to his favorite movie, of course, is The Spelling Bee.
The spelling bee.
Right.
Sure. I love that. And Nesha, talking about the Drake House in a similar way, what's unique to the Drake House? And it's been 20 years for you guys. And it started from essentially what's a group project.
Yeah.
And not a lot of group projects make it into 20 years of success.
Right.
So you've had a key to success and you're unique in some way. Tell us about it.
I think that, first of all, I think the key to success has really been the support of the community. Community is such an important ingredient. You talk about the way that the impact that it has on your baristas and that sense of an inclusion and recognizing that, especially for, as I mentioned before, homeless mothers who have experienced homelessness, they can feel somewhat ostracized and isolated. And so I think that the amount of community support that the Drake House has always gotten, and I think that's a key. That's why I love the origin of the story so much, because it was started by community leaders. And so community has been ingrained. It has been woven through every facet of the organization itself. And that's unique, I think, in and of itself. I think we have a very strong nonprofit community here in North Fulton. So I'm so glad that Brewable is going to venture out and get into the fold. I think you guys are going to be cranking some ice cream for us.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yay.
Excited about that. So I think that's a key ingredient to the success. And what makes us unique is we are probably the only organization, I think now there's a few more, who allow for families to come in full family intact. I know that there's others in North Fulton, but we are the only organization that provides the full housing and living expenses completely free for up to 6 months. They're not paying anything for up to 6 months in our emergency housing program. And the idea behind that is if you are budgeting on not enough, even the smallest amount is not going to help you get ahead. It really is meant for you to have the opportunity to save your dollars, to look at some of the barriers that perhaps led you to this circumstance of homelessness, pay down some of that debt, have a savings. Savings in and of itself can give you a sense of stability because you're not down to your last dime. And then they're working with our program managers or our program coordinators to help chart the path back to stability. And it looks different for everybody. But our goal is not just to get families housed, and not rehousing is one thing, but if the family is not stable, that is just a Band-Aid.
Sure, and you don't want a Band-Aid.
We don't want a Band-Aid.
For the solution.
Exactly. And so I think that's the other thing that makes the Drake House unique, is that although the idea was conceived 20 years ago and they opened the doors in 2006, we have had to evolve our programming through the years to continually meet the needs of the families, not just to get them rehoused, but to get them to the point of stability. And that means that we're serving families longer, not just on our campus, but off of our campus through our Professional Women's Career Network. We're really trying to identify all of the different pathways, all the different ways that we can support families and stay with them until they reach the point of stability. And what's been awesome is as families get there, they are coming back. They want to contribute. They want to, we have one of our cleaning companies that we use is a mom who came through the Drake House, graduated. Now she's a big supporter of our Professional Women's Career Network. Incredible. And she's also one of the vendors that we use. So, I mean, that really I think awesome. Is the full circle that we're looking to.
Yeah, you want to see them back in a different capacity than you first met them.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Well, and I think that speaks to the fact to me that most people don't want a handout. They want to improve themselves. They want to take advantage of what's there. They're just not wanting to get money for a short period of time. That's not success.
You're so right about that.
You do it all.
Yep.
Is so, I think there's a misrepresentation, at least I find out there in the world, that, people just want money.
You're right about that, Nikki. And I think that's a big part of our programming too. I'm so glad that you said that, because it is not we say you do this. It is very much a partnership. We're walking alongside you. If you've been isolated, you're at the Drake House, you're isolated no more. You have a community. You've got some partners to walk in this with you. And I think that sometimes that can be a challenge to navigate through when you've had so many people treating you as if because you need help, I need to dictate to you, or I just am going to throw money at you. sometimes there's walls that we have got to work through, and tearing down some of those barriers so that we can actually build the trust required so that we can partner and walk alongside in that way. But you're right about that. Most times they already have an idea of what it is that they would like to do, how it is that they would like to go forward. Some life event has just set them back a bit, and they just need a chance to exhale, regroup, think through, and go from there.
Have a group of people who say, hey, yeah, you can do it, and we're going to help you.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure anybody, and I do it to myself every day, is you get in your head sometimes, right? And
Yes.
feel less than, or without somebody saying, that's not the case. Let me help you. I'll do it with you.
That's exactly right. And especially for a mom who, when you're feeling like, I think about it for myself, you want your children to look up to you, and they are looking to you for everything. Yep. And for you to be in a space of, I'm not really sure where we're going to lay our heads, but I need to be your everything, my child. I need to give you the sense of security that I don't even feel. That is so traumatizing in and of itself. So I think that's one of the things that, recognizing that, I feel really blessed to be a part of. And I tell everybody that comes through, thank you for allowing us to be a part of your journey, because it is a blessing for us to be able to have that opportunity to pour in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different ways to come into different situations like that. It's not always the stereotypical thing we see in movies. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about this is hiding in plain sight.
Yes.
When you're living on the verge, any setback, a car payment, a missed debt, or somebody gets sick and you have to stay home, or the daycare, it could be a number
all
of
of those things. And when you think about the standard being $82,000 a year, I think about, I taught when I first got here. I taught at Haynesbridge, actually. And actually, most of the children, I was a special ed teacher, and the children that I had the privilege of serving were all on the spectrum.
Oh, wow.
And so I really identify with Brewable and the work that you do. But I didn't make anywhere near $82,000
Sure.
a year.
I can think of plenty of people in their careers that are not making it.
Exactly. I am thinking about plenty of people that we rely on every day who don't make $82,000 a year. And so when you think about that and the choices that they're having to make, it is all of those things that you said, Rebekah. It is one paycheck away, one cold, one doctor's appointment, one too many doctor's appointments.
Not to mention kids.
Exactly.
One of them breaks an arm.
All of those things. And the ripple effect of that it's tremendous, and it really is traumatic. And I think that's the big thing that we're seeing even more so now, is that so much of our work on campus is helping families overcome that trauma of lack. Yeah. Because it is traumatic.
Yeah, that's a tough hill to climb. Glad that you're there doing the work.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Nicky, let's talk about Brewables in your young organization span. What would you consider your biggest accomplishment that you've had so far? I know yesterday the video that was shown was amazingly impressive.
Oh my goodness. Love that.
Like, where can people watch the video for reference?
Absolutely. If you go to brewable.org, it's on there.
The video is amazing. Just go and watch it.
Best video I've seen
It's our
in a long time.
superhero video.
I love it.
I was on the
Loved it.
stage with tears down my eyes, and I was like, I have no tissues up here with me. Why am I doing this to myself? But you mentioned it was for a fundraiser. So let's talk about what's your biggest accomplishment. And
Absolutely. I tend to think the biggest accomplishments personally are the small things. And one of the small things that has come up with the new space is it was in the beginning of January or February, and I happened to be there for the day helping out with some things. And a mother, I didn't know she was a mother, a woman and her husband came in, and literally this woman was sobbing. And came over to her and I was like, I'm sorry, how can I help you? And she said, I have a daughter who has Down syndrome. And I never thought she could ever have a job. I never thought she could ever do anything. And you have brought me hope.
Aww.
And I was like, wow, because the employee that day had Down syndrome. She can do anything, Donna. And I was like, wow, okay. Beyond giving people a job and helping them feel valued for who they are in the world, I forget about the families, because being a mom with a kid with autism, I think that was the biggest thing I worried about too.
Sure.
What happens? What happens when I'm not here? What happens when I can't stand up for him?
Yeah.
How do we do this? what is he going to do?
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I felt that was a huge accomplishment, that somebody saw that and said, you've brought my family hope.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
beautiful.
Yeah. So I think
once
that's
again
a big
don't have any
accomplishment.
tissues.
I know. I don't know why. I tell that story, it always makes me cry because it was so impactful having that woman I could feel the sense of relief. There's something there for my kid.
Yeah.
Her life doesn't have, when the child is small, you don't know. And you want them to have, everybody to have a meaningful life.
Yes.
And she saw what everyone was doing is bringing meaning and value. And I thought, well, okay, that's an accomplishment.
Absolutely. Think about how many people you are inspiring that don't get the opportunity to say that to you. That to me is huge. Thinking about our children and how much we want for them, and to think, what are they going to do? And to come into a space where it's,
this is great.
Yes.
And this would be awesome for my kid.
Yes, I love
and
that.
Oh my God, that's great. So I think that is something personally that really touched me and said, we're doing the right stuff. I think that's a big accomplishment. Our overall big, hairy ideal in the world is that differences are not pointed out. I don't have to say this kid has autism.
Sure.
This kid has Down syndrome. It's just John, Scott, Griffin.
They're a whole person.
Yeah. We don't need to label you in order to introduce you in the world. It's enough who you are.
Yeah.
You're clearly moving the needle on that. Just as the story that you mentioned about the children coming in, and it's, that's no big deal. Like my barista is, so it normalizes it all right there.
And children
with the
take
kids.
for normal what we tell them is normal.
Exactly. And as they grow up, it remains normal. So it could change a whole generation.
Well, I hope so.
Let's hope the bug catches on.
Let's hope the bug catches on, because I feel like that's the big overarching, hey, that's the world we want to live in.
Absolutely.
But we'd love to continue to grow so that we can provide jobs. We have a list this long of potential employees. We don't have enough jobs to accommodate everybody who wants to work. And we don't want to grow for growing's sake. We want to grow because it can provide a job for someone who wants to work, and we know that job will change their life and even their families' lives in so many ways. We had one barista who actually is one of the guys who doesn't speak, and the mom came in after the holidays, and she said, we had the best holiday this year. And I said, why is that? She said, well, Gavin got to buy everybody a gift.
Aw.
And he had never given anything to anybody before. He was always the taker. People were doing for him.
Yeah.
And she said he was so happy, and he gave all of his brothers and sisters and his mom and dad a gift from his tips that he made at Brewable.
Sweet.
That is awesome.
And I was like,
How fulfilling for him.
Yes.
exactly. So it was like, wow, okay. So it touches so many different things about how we feel about ourselves.
Absolutely.
And our families, and how we interact with each other, and the value we place on those kind of things. So,
just the little things we take for granted.
Yeah.
That you don't even think of when you're thinking about somebody who might be on the spectrum in some sort of way.
yeah, exactly. So we'd love to have more locations. I think you can attest to the challenge of doing things is it's not free.
Sure.
And we are, in terms of how we keep things running, is our goal is to be revenue neutral, meaning we bring in enough from the shop to cover our cost.
Sure.
I'd love to tell you we're there. We're not.
Right.
So we're always looking to raise funds because we fill in the holes with that. But we'd love to get to that spot. And then if we can do that, then that gives us the jumping off point where we could open another space and hire more people. But it's a challenge. We're not afraid of challenges, but it's a challenge.
Clearly you're not afraid. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And speaking of challenges, Nesha, let's talk about the Drake House and in terms of challenges that you all face at the house. Is there anything in particular that sticks out to mind over the past 20 years or even more recently as a challenge that was great to overcome and finally feel like you overcame that hill, climbed that hill, and planted the flag and said, we did it?
I don't know about climbing the hill and planting the flag, because the thing about serving people, and especially in a time of great need, is that the second you overcome something and then there's something else presents. And so I feel like we've been very good at evolving and adapting our programming and leveraging the resources and support that we have to meet families where they are. I feel very proud of that. I feel very proud of the ways in which our programming has evolved to help families to be a resource until they get to stability, but that also creates a path to stability. And it's not just something that actually provides the path and provision to get there. So I feel very grateful for that. I think that the challenge that we are most actively trying to overcome, and I will eventually sound like a broken record, but I can't believe I've made it this far into the conversation without mentioning it, but affordable housing. I would love to be able to say that we have tackled that challenge in a meaningful way. I think that we are standing in the gap in a way that for now is bridging the gap enough to help to give families the support that they need to really get to stability. And that is we have a housing stability program where we're able to provide rental supports and career supports even after they've been on our campus in their own living environment. So in their own apartment, or usually it's been a rental unit for up to a year. It starts at a certain level and then it trickles down over the course of the year. But we're also working with them in the career space so that they can increase their income so that after that year, when we pull away, they can afford the rent on their own. Right. So I'm very grateful that we are able to do that. I appreciate the support of the community that allows us to do that. But to your point, Nikki, the more that we pour in, the more the cost. There is a cost to all of that. And so it may not be long-term sustainable, but that's where we are really looking at how can we partner, how can we influence, how can we advocate for the attainable housing that our families need in this area.
I think that makes a lot of sense. We've talked a lot about that too, actually, with our baristas. Is there are lots of folks who could live more independently with some level of supports, but there is nowhere around here where we could make that happen unless somebody was willing to step in and really hand us the keys, so to speak. So that's a big issue in the IDD community too, because as my son tells me, someday you're going to have to live on your own.
Griff.
I love that.
Griff is fun.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I don't know if I can do that. But knows that he wants to live on his own.
Sure.
He feels like he can do that. Yep. But I can't do that without some level of support because most folks take medication. They may not be able to drive. In his case, he actually can drive, which is great. But somebody needs to check in. Yeah. And we just don't have anywhere where we can make that happen around here. Yeah. Because these guys, even though we do pay them, they can't pay a rent.
Sure. Well, and I think as amazing as this North Fulton community is, and that's one of the things that I feel like the Drake House is a true testament to what can happen in the North Fulton community when leaders identify a need and pool their resources to fill it. The same thing could be true of attainable housing. I think to diversify our housing stock, it's not rocket science. Other communities have done it. And I think looking at it from the perspective of here, we've got our baristas who would like to have some place where they can live independently, a supportive housing model, for example. Yep. We've got our workforce who make less than $82,000 a year who need to be able to provide for their families without having to sacrifice health care and healthy food. So I think that just like these leaders did for homelessness, we can do for a diversified housing stock, because ultimately everyone benefits from the people who work here being able to live and play here too.
Yeah, absolutely. I know from the chamber side, we talk about housing all the time in terms of business, right? So the chamber exists for business, and the amount of partnerships that businesses can make in involving nonprofits, private partnerships together, public and private partnerships. We're seeing a lot more talk from our businesses about why this makes business sense.
Absolutely.
And I think that's hopefully going to be the inspiration for North Fulton moving forward as we continue to grow and challenges come. We're putting over $1 billion into the express lanes that are going to go up and down 400. More people are coming.
Right.
Well, everybody's got to have a place to eat, and everybody's got to have school teachers and firefighters and policemen. And so how do we solve for that?
Absolutely.
We're
How do
not
we
solving
prepare
something.
for that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody, anybody. And so it's important to have leaders not only at the city and county and state level, but in the private sector as well, who are willing to make commitments to how they're going to house the employees as they come into a community or they grow in a community.
Absolutely. And I really applaud the Chamber for being that sort of connector. I really appreciate the ways in which this Chamber connects the nonprofit sector to the business community. And just as in the Drake House being that testament of what can happen when you bring the leadership, North Fulton is a perfect example of being able to see so many different facets of the community that you live in that you wouldn't otherwise be exposed to. Mm-hmm. And what comes out of that is this motivation and the connections to actually engage in your community in a way that otherwise you may not have been aware.
Right.
I really appreciate the Chamber being in that space, and I look forward to ways in which you guys are going to continue to facilitate solutions for preparing for all that growth.
We're happy to serve in that space. And speaking of all the wonderful things that we have here, North Fulton is renowned for its educated workforce. It's got world-class infrastructure, extensive business services. It's an ideal place, and we are growing faster than the rest of our region, respectively. Are there advantages and opportunities that your organizations have experienced because we live in such an affluent area?
For us, for sure. I will speak to that just in terms of we have resale boutiques. We have one in Roswell, one in Alpharetta, and one in Sandy Springs.
I made a donation on my way in today.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate that. But I think that is something that it allows us to diversify our revenue stream. And it also allows for us to provide professional clothing for the families that we serve. But I think that the success of those stores truly is attributed to where we live. Because when you come in there, you can get some really good finds. I don't know if you've shopped in it, right?
Yeah. If you're not shopping at the Drake House, you are missing out, ladies.
That's right.
And I think that's a value add. And I recognize even just the amount of support that we get. There's quite a few people here who we have a lot of volunteers. We get a lot of volunteer support, whether it's at our closets or on our campus. And so being in an affluent area where there are people who have the time and the resources where maybe they don't have to work and they have the opportunity to come and volunteer and are willing to spend their time in that way. That's one way that I can really think of, and just in terms of the stores and the volunteerism, that it has really been a blessing for us.
Right.
Yeah, I think we've gotten a lot of support from the business community, financial support to get started. And that's something you will need some folks who have that giving in their DNA, but also have the money to do it.
Sure.
And for us, it is important. It's hard in some ways too.
Sure.
But it's like a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
When we were looking for a new store, we started looking at storefronts in the area, and it was like, oh my God, we're never going to be able to have another space. Like, we cannot afford any of this. And then we were blessed with the folks at the United Methodist Church who had a space and were willing to really help us out for very little money. And you wouldn't be able to do that somewhere else. So I say it's a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
We can't get our own space because we can't afford these rents are tremendous up here. But there are pockets of the community that have things that they go, hey, what about this? And they're willing to donate that or donate their time or their energy towards us. Yeah.
That's great. And speaking of donating time and energy, in terms of volunteer opportunities or how the community can get involved, what are the needs of Brewable from the community?
We always have a nice big fundraiser coming up in October. And we're having...
Is it black tie? What kind of fundraiser are we talking
what
about?
we're doing this year, we're doing a brunch. So it's a superhero diner theme where we're doing a brunch at the Computer Museum of America, which is another nonprofit here in the area. So it's always great. The baristas will be serving coffee. And we always have the film we showed, and that's on the website. That is the film we did for this past fundraiser. We always love people coming to get a chance to see the baristas and meet the families and really see the impact of what it means to have a paying job for these folks. From a volunteer standpoint, we do have a couple of different volunteer areas. One big thing that here's where the community and we came together is the owners of Cafe Intermezzo actually approached us 4 years ago and said, hey, you know what? We square up all of our cakes. And so we throw away the tops of the cakes. Huh. So we were thinking, what if you came to our kitchen and we showed you how to make cake pops? And then you could take our cake tops, we'll save them for you, and you could then make cake pops and sell them. And it would be a great way for us to come together and take something that was going to be wasted and turn it into valuable sales for us. And I will tell you, cake pops are our number one selling item.
I bet. Who doesn't love a cake pop?
Right?
Yeah, exactly. But so they're a little labor intensive. We love to have volunteers. We usually can take about 8 to 10 at a time and make about 400 of them. Oh. And we literally can go through 400 on a Saturday with dance and gymnastics. Oh yeah, easy. Wow. We put those right out in front of the cash register, so that kid is ready to grab them.
Can I please?
Yes, exactly. So that's another area, but I think that we don't have a whole lot of like large things for people to do, but definitely that's an area that we can always use help in.
And simply buying a cup of coffee also
helps.
And
just coming in and buying a cup of coffee, that does so much and it puts $1 in the coffers, but that's what the baristas are looking for. They're looking to meet you guys. That's how it makes them feel good, is meeting everybody. So yeah, coming in and saying hi and engaging them is what makes their day and them serving you.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Come get a cup of coffee.
I'll tell you, in this Roswell location, can't let you forget this. People who need to get a cup of coffee in Roswell do not go to any place else because we have ample parking. There is a big, huge parking lot.
You heard it here first,
Golden nugget.
That is a golden nugget because if you try to park somewhere else,
good luck.
Good luck. So, yeah, great coffee, great atmosphere, and you can park easily.
And a fundraiser's coming in October.
I
like it. Okay. And Nesha, what about over at Drake House? What are the volunteer opportunities there?
We have a lot of opportunities to volunteer. We, of course, are... we have just opened a fresh market, so where families can shop. It is nice to have as many resources as we possibly can on the campus because so many times after mom gets home from work, the last thing she wants to do is have to run out and go anywhere.
Sure, we don't know what that's like.
Right. So having the after school program right there and they can pop by the market and grab something. And so soon we will have some volunteer opportunities there. We've got volunteer opportunities in our after school programming. We offer life skills classes every Monday, and that can range from any variety of topics from financial literacy to professional development, resources. It really does run the gamut. So if there's something that someone feels particularly passionate about that they would like to share that could be translated as a life skill, that's a space there. We have a number of other opportunities listed on our website. And of course, we also have a fundraiser kind of community event coming up, a couple of them. Miss Mary's Ice Cream Crankin', which you guys will be at, is in August. It's also going to be held at our UMC, so Roswell United Methodist.
Awesome. Okay, Roswell UMC.
I know, they're just plugging in all kinds of ways. And then in October, we will have an inaugural event that we're calling the Bootleggers Ball. More to come on that.
That sounds like fun.
It is. I think it is going to be a good time. So there's plenty of ways to pour in. We also host volunteer groups. That is largely a way that we are able to maintain the grounds on our campus.
Sure.
We certainly appreciate that. But also on our website, we usually keep an up-to-date list of the volunteer opportunities that we have
speaking
available.
of the website, tell us where we can find you.
thedrakehouse.org.
That's good. And I assume I know because I follow the Drake House on social. So I know when the Drake House is open for shopping and what discounts they have going on they can find you on Facebook.
For sure. Definitely follow the Closets on all social media. Actually, the Closets and the Drake House. The Drake Closets do have lots of wonderful promotions. And of course, if you don't feel like volunteering, just clean out your closet and bring us your wares. We'll take that. Or come check out a new outfit for an upcoming event. You'll really be surprised at the nuggets you can find at the Drake Closet.
Excellent, excellent. And Nicky, what about over at Brewable? What are the socials, the websites? Tell us how to find you.
Okay, we are at brewable.org.
.org. Love it. Yeah. And social?
We are on Facebook, Instagram as Brewable. And LinkedIn. We actually have a Brewable page on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you both for being on the show with me today. It was a lot of fun. I think we talked more than we were supposed to, which is always a good thing.
It was
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies. And I also want to thank our listeners for joining us on the 400 Insider, presented by the Greater North Fulton Chamber. To listen to the show again or to hear any of our previous episodes, visit GNFCC400insider.com. And to find more about the Greater North Fulton Chamber events, programs, everything we do, you can visit GNFCC.com. Until next time, I'm Rebekah Anderson, and this has been the GNFCC 400 Insider on Business Radio X.